Hello, and welcome to the Blueprint Briefing. I am your host, Marcus Xavier. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the architecture of modern power. We aren't just looking at the news. We are diving deep into the very blueprints of our reality. We are exploring a fascinating and critical intersection where ancient faith meets modern foreign policy on the front lines of contemporary history. In the standard world of political commentary, we often treat foreign policy like a game of high-stakes chessboard, calculated and driven purely by material assets. But what happens when the moves on the board aren't dictated by secular strategy, but by what leaders call a biblical responsibility? Today, we provide a factual analysis of the rhetoric surrounding Iran and Israel and the influential political constituencies viewing the Middle East through prophecy. This is the story of how theology has become the engine of modern diplomacy. Let's establish the facts by looking at the contemporary players on the global stage. Recently, we have witnessed a massive resurgence in aggressive rhetoric regarding the Iranian regime. Take Senator Lindsey Graham, for example. Observers have described his recent stance as being reborn, characterized by a renewed enthusiasm for military action. To understand the history here, we must recognize that Graham's stance is not a deviation. It is a continuation of a long-standing tradition. Graham argues that a regime change in Iran would birth a new Middle East. He frames this not just as a victory for security, but as a massive economic windfall, suggesting that restructuring Iran and liberating regions like Cuba would make the United States rich. But as journalists, we have to look deeper. Behind the talk of wealth lies a more complex motivation that bridges the gap. To understand the history currently being made, we must establish the ground truth. A primary argument for intervention centers on Iran's nuclear capabilities. Senator Kevin Cramer has argued that these capabilities must be taken out because the regime is willing to use it. However, when we analyze the historical data, we must clarify a vital distinction: the difference between nuclear capability and nuclear intent. Factually, during these critical discussions, Iran did not actually possess a nuclear weapon. In 2015, the JCPOA was signed. This deal strictly restricted Iran's uranium enrichment to less than 4%. To create a nuclear weapon, uranium must be enriched to over 90%. Under that deal, third-party verification was in place. It was only after the deal was scuttled that Iran began to compile enriched uranium more aggressively. This brings us to the most significant analytical point of our briefing: the biblical argument. When Senator Cramer was asked why the U.S. maintains an ironclad partnership with Israel, he stated, "We have a biblical responsibility to them." This signals that for a powerful constituency, foreign policy is no longer just an extension of the state. It is an extension of faith. This biblical responsibility is rooted in the theology of Christian Zionism. This is the belief that the return of the Jewish people to Israel is a literal prerequisite for the second coming of Christ. We are seeing a move from secular diplomacy into the realm of eschatology, or the study of the end of the world. For the evangelical Christian Zionist right, events in the Middle East are seen as evidence of the fact that the rapture is coming. The term infidel is frequently used in these circles to describe the other. This isn't just a word. It's a linguistic tool. It creates a rigid binary, us versus them, the godly versus the ungodly. Culturally, this movement is driven by a rejection of modern concerns in favor of heavenly ones. They are often factually uninterested in earthly crises like climate change. If the world is ending, why focus on the environment? When policy is driven by a desire to fulfill prophecy rather than to sustain the planet, the long-term livability of our world is at stake. Now, how does this impact the ballot box? The data is clear. In previous elections, Donald Trump won white evangelicals by 83%. Regardless of Trump's personal beliefs, he is beholden to this constituency. His choice of Mike Pence was a strategic move to secure this base. This creates a powerful feedback loop. The constituency provides the votes, and the politician provides policy that mirrors their theological worldview. You might ask, Marcus, why does this matter to me? It matters for three factual, historical reasons. The economic impact. History shows the cost of conflict often falls on you, the taxpayer, while the benefits are concentrated in a few hands. Global stability. When foreign policy is based on bringing about the end times, it increases the risk of unpredictable and violent outcomes. Domestic policy. A focus on the afterlife means pressing issues like your healthcare and social services are often deprioritized. Today, we have explored the factual history behind the headlines. We have seen how biblical responsibility is used to justify military postures. To truly understand our world, we must understand the blueprints that leaders use to build their arguments. Thank you for joining me. If you found this analysis educational, make sure to subscribe to the Blueprint Briefing. I am Marcus Xavier. Stay informed, stay objective, and always keep looking at the blueprint.